fresh brains.
The man didn't expect Murphy to make such a request, but to express his loyalty, he could only. The man never thought his devoted loyalty would end in his death like this. It's also worth noting the man's method was extremely cunning and brutal, as he literally lifted the man's skull open, without damaging the brain inside in the slightest. Murphy deeply inhaled the blood-scented air around him. What a wonderful sensation it was. If there's no one there, he wants to eat it right away. The man turned the knife handle and then knelt down to express his submission. Although this guy's abilities were indeed outstanding, Murphy still had a question in his heart. Zona was supposed to be a utopia, so why would the man choose to come to him?
A vaccine that was developed by an infected scientist. Their messiah. Much like yourself. But now their immunity is failing and their messiah is dying. You, Mr. Murphy, are humanity's last hope.
So you understand how serious I am.
What I understand is there is no alternative.
After the man finished speaking, Murphy nodded. Seeking a more stable backer seemed reasonable enough. He passed the knife over and said, "Eat that brain to prove your loyalty." The man hesitated, then turned to look at the bloody delicacy, licking his lips, showing extreme hunger. The man grabbed the entire brain and bit into it, even turning back to look at Murphy with apparent enjoyment. Seeing this, Murphy finally let his guard down, and it even made him restless, wanting to have a bite himself. Just then, his subordinates called for Murphy, and he hurried to the stairwell.
We're fine.
Mr. Murphy.
Give us just a few minutes.
Everything all right?
I'll let you know.
But when he returned, he saw the man sucking on his fingers, looking unsatisfied.
Sorry, apologize, sir. I just couldn't help myself.
I understand. It's in our nature. Can you get me more?
Yes. Yes.
Let's keep this between you and me.
Discretion is one of my skills.
Human brains had an irresistible allure for Murphy, and normally, he couldn't have his subordinates bring them to him, but now with such a capable confidant, he might often enjoy this delicacy. He thought this while looking at the empty skull, still with blood traces on it. At that moment, Will came upstairs and encountered the man with his mouth full of blood, thinking something had happened.
Happened, sir.
Clean this.
I'll have this cleaned up right away.
Hang on. You're certain the new recruit got the inoculation, yes?
Puked his brains out.
While downstairs, the man ran to a secluded trash can and began to vomit uncontrollably, utterly disgusted. Was the man really under control? The answer was no. Recall this morning when he joined, viewers carefully watched his vaccinated shoulder, which distinctly bore a dog head tattoo, but it was missing when he went to see Murphy. The truth is only one: the arm was fake, specially taken from a survivor he killed on his way to the Blend's kingdom, then grafted inside his clothes. After the vaccination, he threw the arm into the trash can and then made a cross on his own arm with a knife. So, the man was entirely acting, even forcing himself to eat the brain in disgust. Of course, he didn't really eat the brain. He had hidden it in his clothes while Murphy was away. Admirably, the man is ruthless enough to eat the brain without changing his expression. He doesn't plan to throw away the remaining brain. Murphy needs more, right? Just perfect to use this to fulfill his duty. Meanwhile, several kilometers away on a highway, Doc is moving forward, pushing a shopping cart. After leaving the mental hospital, he has been searching for Roberta, but in an apocalypse without internet or communication, relying on luck to run into them is incredibly hard. Suddenly, they hear the roar of an engine behind them. Doc quickly hides behind an abandoned car, as people are unpredictable nowadays. But when he sees the driver, Doc can hardly believe his eyes. It's Roberta and the others.
Warren! Warren! Hey, you guys!
This is an unexpectedly pleasant surprise. As soon as Roberta gets out of the car, she begins asking loudly where Doc had run off to, making them search for him all this time. Doc also feels a wave of emotion, narrating his experiences in the mental hospital, leaving them with a cliffhanger. An hour later, 10K finally wakes up, having had a terrible dream, and takes a moment to realize where he is. Looking up, 10K sees Hector and immediately becomes alert. Roberta quickly explains that Hector is now one of them. It's no wonder 10K was shouting and screaming, considering that when he left the X team, Hector was still the second in command of the Zero group. After clearing things up, Roberta pulled 10K up to take a good look at him, having not seen him for several months.
Good to see you, Conscious.
After some small talk, Roberta got straight to the point, asking 10K about Murphy's whereabouts. 10K replied that Murphy was now in Spokane, where he had established a Blend's kingdom. Anyone bitten by him could join, and most importantly, everyone seemed to like Murphy. Hearing about Murphy's recent actions, Hector suggested simply killing him, but at that moment, 10K subconsciously said,
"You can't kill him."
Now knowing Murphy's location, Roberta immediately decided to head to Spokane, but they had to proceed on foot since their vehicle was out of fuel. Along the way, everyone was filling 10K in on what had happened during this time. Suddenly, 10K felt his hands trembling, as if the original vaccine was gradually losing its effectiveness. He tried to remain calm, absolutely not wanting Roberta and the others to know he had been bitten by Murphy. An hour later, they passed by a shore with a small gas station, but the scene before them took everyone by surprise. The area was filled with blood red, and a zombie, with both hands chopped off and chained securely, had a gas nozzle stuffed in its mouth, clearly having suffered greatly before turning into a zombie. There was a bloody handprint on the back of a fuel tank. Needless to say, it was definitely the work of that Red Hand gang. Truly despicable people. A sign nearby read, "Car thieves will pay the price," signed by a scorpion. Then, Roberta instructed everyone to look around for usable supplies, but 10K was not in the mood because Sun May took out the medicine from his backpack, making him feel uneasy. Doc naturally noticed this scene. He brought 10K in because he felt it was necessary to tell Roberta about him being bitten by Murphy, as keeping it a secret wasn't a solution, but 10K still insisted that Doc keep it a secret, having already tried to erase Murphy's image from his mind. As they were talking, Roberta and Sun May came in, also wanting to inquire about the medicine. 10K avoided eye contact, giving a vague answer, saying he didn't know what the medicine was, that Dr. Murch had given it to him to keep, indicating it must be something important.
Really?
Roberta and Sun May's expression seemed somewhat meaningful. Meanwhile, Addie was in the car fiddling with the radio, trying to contact Citizen Z at the North Pole station, undoubtedly still receiving no response. It's unclear what happened to Citizen Z, who has been missing for months. As Addie was tuning the radio, they thought they heard something from inside it, but upon listening carefully, the sound was actually coming from the road behind them.
Fear no more.
Somebody want to tell me what the hell that
Fear
is?
no more. Guaranteed.
It's like the blue dude himself.
It turned out to be Murphy's recording, along with a poster car, seemingly to promote the Blend's kingdom widely to attract more survivors to join. This guy was even advertising for himself, meaning they needed to hurry and find Murphy before he amassed a large army, or it would be too late. The others didn't dally and immediately set off to chase down the advertisement van ahead. Capturing the driver would make infiltrating the Blend's kingdom much simpler, but when they got on the road, they noticed something amiss. The sound from the advertisement van was intermittent, and it had already stopped by the roadside. The X-team cautiously approached, weapons drawn, and found the van empty. Though the driver seemed to be still sitting, Roberta commanded her team to flank the vehicle, but upon reaching the front, she found the driver slumped over the steering wheel, dead, with a blood-red handprint on his face. It seemed like the work of the Red Hand again, truly a group of despicable individuals. Sun May found the man had been shot through the chest and died, but oddly, he hadn't turned into a zombie, which was quite strange. 10K seemed to think of something. He flipped the man's face, revealing a bite mark on it. Everyone was somewhat surprised. Does this mean that Blends don't turn into zombies after they die?
He's just trying to help people.
When 10K blurted out those words, it was purely instinctual, and he immediately realized his own slip of the tongue. Hastily changing the subject, he mentioned that Murphy had a reconnaissance plan in mind.
An expedition to where?
Springfield, Illinois.
The members of Team X were taken aback. Wasn't that the place they had passed by once? What would Murphy want there? Could there be something that was drawing him in? Recalling it, Roberta and Addie had an epiphany.
Lucy.
Who's Lucy? Murphy's daughter.
Upon learning Murphy had a child, Sun May excitedly speculated that the child might also inherit immunity to zombies. Roberta's eyes lit up. Finding Lucy could mean developing a vaccine. She decided to find some food before making a detailed plan. Later, They made their way to a hilltop for a barbecue, where the only thing they could find was crickets. Small as they may seem, these critters are packed with protein. That's how they consoled themselves. The one who felt it the most was Hector. Previously, as the second in command of the Zero Group, he was accustomed to feasting on lavish dishes every day. Never had he imagined that one day he would rely on these creatures to stave off hunger. Doc didn't mind. He imagined the roasted crickets as delicacies, closing his eyes as he ate. After eating, Roberta, after much thought, decided to split the group. She assigned Addie and Doc to find Lucy, providing mutual support. 10K mapped out Murphy's expedition route. As long as they followed it, there shouldn't be any unexpected incidents. However, the rest of the group decided to stick to the original plan of capturing Murphy, to prevent his influence from growing too rapidly. After the tasks were assigned, Doc, realizing he would soon part ways with them, felt uneasy about leaving 10K. So, he pulled 10K aside where no one could hear them, urging him once again to confess to Roberta about being bitten. Yet, 10K still refused.
You're putting me in a bad position.
I know. Just please, trust me.
I do. I shouldn't, but I do.
With that, Doc and Addie set off in the advertising van, hoping they could smoothly locate Lucy. Meanwhile, within the territory of the Blends, Murphy was hosting his key subordinates. The table was laden with roasted beef, as well as corn, blueberries, and strawberries they had grown themselves. It was evident that the kingdom had achieved self-sufficiency, and a wonderful life was unfolding. Every person present wore a smile, extremely grateful for their initial choice. Otherwise, how could they possibly have such a life in the post-apocalypse? Moreover, Murphy had good news.
Thanks to the hard work of all of you, we'll have the power back up.
To the man that took away our fears and gave us back our lives. To the Murphy.
To the Murphy.
Eat!
His subordinates, unable to contain themselves any longer, started stuffing pieces of beef into their mouths, emitting sounds of enjoyment. However, Murphy, looking on, didn't show any appetite, even refusing when someone offered him some. He explained that he would eat later. Of course, this was just Murphy's polite refusal. In reality, he was waiting for someone. Half an hour later, his subordinates had nearly finished eating. Will had even specially saved a portion, but Murphy still politely declined. Suddenly, Murphy smelled something delicious. The person he had been waiting for had finally arrived. After asking Will and the others to leave, the man came up with a plate in hand and uncovered it to reveal delicious brain delicacies. It was exactly this scent. Seeing Murphy indulge, the man felt a wave of disgust. He was tired of the pretense and decided to take action directly.
You know why I'm here, don't you?
This isn't about that stupid list of yours.
You and I are gonna take a little walk.
The man's intention in taking Murphy hostage was to exchange him for a reward back in Zona. Quietly taking Murphy away was unrealistic. The man needed to make Murphy willingly accompany him, so he had prepared an extra measure for this.
Your daughter.
Lucy? That's not my daughter, you idiot.
With no other choice, as the entire realm of Blends was under Murphy's control, the man didn't want to die and had to surrender peacefully. The man's left hand was handcuffed to the chair, and his right hand and legs were tied together, making escape utterly impossible. Murphy was both angry and worried, unable to comprehend how the man had managed to break free, especially since he had been vaccinated with the Blends vaccine. Moreover, Murphy was curious to know which high-ranking individual from Zona wanted to capture him.
Answer me! I want a name!
You will give me a name.
I can't give you a name! If you come with me to Zona, you'll be treated with extraordinary favor. You'll have more wealth and power than you could possibly imagine. Huh?
At this moment, a group of subordinates excitedly ran in, informing Murphy that the power station had been repaired and only needed the switch to be pulled to restore power. Hearing this, Murphy's anger subsided a bit.
For I will have your brains from my... All right, everyone, up to the tower. This is what we have been waiting for.
Meanwhile, Team X had reached a location not far from Murphy, with Roberta using binoculars to survey the terrain.
Sorry, what?
How fortified is the compound?
It's got 2 fences, and I'm in a zombie mode, so only a blend can get in.
10K felt the effects of the original vaccine fading away, with the sole thought of protecting Murphy consuming his mind. He simply couldn't bring himself to betray Murphy. It was already difficult for 10K to disclose the defensive setup inside. 10K ran to the car's trunk searching for the bag of original vaccine that Sun-Mei was supposed to have placed there. Fortunately, he found the bag, but upon opening it, he discovered it was empty.
Look, please.
You going to...
10K!
He's bit! He's bit!
10K, let me help you!
10K ran off, and by evening, Hector had still not found him, but just then, a bell rang out in all directions, revealing Murphy and his subordinates atop the tallest building, ready to witness the moment of electrification. If the realm of blends was the future of the post-apocalyptic world, then tonight would also become part of history. Everyone was thrilled. After all, it had been many years since they last experienced the wonderful life electricity brings. Murphy picked up a flare gun, ready to signal the engineer on the other side to switch on the power. The sudden illumination of electric lights stunned Roberta and her team. Could this really be the work of that blue-skinned bastard? Perhaps survivors from all over the world would see this light and come to join Murphy.
We gonna need some backup.
After coming down from the tower, everyone was shouting Murphy's name. Suddenly, Murphy's expression changed. Blood traces appeared on the ground, and he immediately ran to where the man was locked up. Indeed, the guy had escaped, and to everyone's astonishment, he left behind a severed hand that was giving the middle finger. Truly a ruthless person. Could it be that the man had gnawed off his own hand with his mouth?